crazy kids. So
Hi,
good to see you. Hi.
How are you? We can't see you.
Oh, you can't see me? Oh,
Not
Lord,
yet.
hold on.
There she
There
is.
it is. How are you, love?
It's not vodka because it's only 7 a.m. here. So not much of a pub at 7, although I am a big advocate for day drinking, but this is a bit early.
I love it.
Hello, Thomas.
Good. That's a nice surprise to see you here. Welcome.
Thank you. I feel so excited.
Really glad to have you on. This is awesome.
Yeah, this is good.
I think you're our first Australian.
Yeah.
You what, sweetie?
You're our first Australian.
Wow. Okay. I feel very, very privileged. Well, let's see if it's going to work. I was telling Jason our internet is so crap here, right?
Yeah. So we expect
We'll just have to see how it goes.
we expect you to live up to the stereotype of Australians and drinking. So you have no choice.
I'll act like I'm drinking. As I said, it's 7 a.m. and that's even early for me. So sorry about that. But I'll drink my orange juice.
Where's orange juice? Hold the champagne.
Yep.
Honestly, we have shortages here, right? And so you can't get Corona beer, you can't get sangria. I mean, it's like getting real,
Yeah.
right? So yeah.
Wow.
Well, we have an abundance of everything peasants, so I'm sorry. I've seen no show. Oh my God, the beer is flowing and the food is everywhere. So I've been watching about these. No, I'm just joking, but I've been watching about these shortages around the world, and this is the bottlenecks. This is the bullshit.
Yeah.
It really is.
It'll probably happen here. We're a smaller population, so but it'll eventually come here.
Look, what it is, what's going on here is that it's kind of odd because it's summer. So generally people don't get sick in summer, but it's running through the population. And because of our social distancing and you have to stay home and these tests that make you positive, even when you're not, even if you're orange juice, people can't go to work, right? So they can't make champagne, they can't drive champagne, they can't put champagne on shelves. And so the whole thing is completely constructed.
The play.
And it's
And I know this is not off topic tonight, but quickly, the fact that it's ravaging through the summer shows that it's a direct result of the needlecraft. Absolutely, it was the booster.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm gonna.
and people can't see it here at all. They
never will. They never will.
All right. I'm gonna start letting some more folks into the pub here. Let's let Jade in.
Hello, Jade.
I think that's a still.
No.
No.
Oh,
There she is.
Hi.
Jade.
That was a still. How's everybody doing?
Fantastic.
Thank
How are
you.
you?
I'm good.
I love your tapestry in the background. That's gorgeous.
It's my dad's. Shh, don't
I know. I love the colors. Those are my favorite colors.
I've just been decorating. Well, I've started decorating because my dad's been putting insulation in the wall. So I've been painting the beams, and it's a very similar color to the dark, it's like the orangey red that's on the outside. So I thought that would look really nice there.
Beautiful.
And it matches your hair beautifully, Jay.
Greg,
Oh,
motherfucking Moffat.
thank you.
You're all coordinated. It's gorgeous.
It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. And Timony, lovely to talk to you finally. Mwah.
You're
Hi,
gorgeous,
Greg.
calling. Greg motherfucking Moffat.
Greg was here, and now Greg's gone.
No.
That was quick.
He's like, nope.
There he is.
I'm off. Oh, he's back again.
Hello, Greg. Lovely to meet you.
Hello, I'm just trying to sort this crap out. Where are we here? So, I wish it wasn't different every time. Why doesn't it just perform in a uniform way?
Right.
So if I can be seen and heard, then that's sufficient. Hello again.
Yes, and you look very smart with that. My very nice scarf, I have to say.
It's I got it from a vintage shop here. It's a 1950s one.
You got similar
Aw.
taste to me. I like scarves as well. That looks good on you.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I had noticed you like scarves. Yeah, there's just something about it. It's just of a gentleman's item, isn't it?
Sophisticated pub.
Well, you should all consider yourself lucky that I have actually clothes on because it's so hot. I'm about to melt. So a scarf is like, whoa, forget about it.
Well, we know you've got clothes on as far as we can see, but we don't know what's happening.
I know. Don't have me stand up, honey.
I have book envy every time I see your background, Greg.
Well, but books are available to buy, you know, so you can
The
get.
whole shelf full.
Pub and a library all in one.
These are not for sale, but you know, books are generally available. There's this new website called Amazon.
Have you seen this? Have you heard about this?
Yeah, unfortunately, my bank balance has also heard of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hi, Tina.
Hi guys.
Hi, Tina.
You know,
The trick is to buy books like Thomas's that go up in value over time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like every fucker got rich off my books except me.
So who just came on, guys? Because I can't see a name and
That's Tina.
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 Hello,
is-
Tina.
Yeah.
Is it Vanice or Vanessa?
It's Venice.
Oh, good. I don't
Lovely
want to
to meet-
mispronounce your name. Lovely to meet you. Thank you.
Denise and her husband do the Magical Egypt channel. So you've probably seen those videos.
Oh yes, I do know it. I am subscribed to your channel. I do listen.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tina. I like to hear that.
Hi, James. Hi, Kimberly.
Kim.
Hi, Thomas. Hi,
Hello.
everyone.
I'm-
How's it going?
I'm trying to enable my camera.
And Christian vanished there.
Vanishing X.
Gremlins will be at it again.
Mm-hmm.
So while the majority of us are here, myself, Timony, and Jason decided that we'd have every so often, or maybe all the time, we don't know to see how this goes, a themed pub conversation. And the first thing we all, like nearly all said at the same time, was dreams. So we'd like to talk about dreams, dream analysis, dreams we've had. And I think, because like, hey, Christian, to put it my way, I know this might sound out there, but I actually believe dreams are another reality that we go into, and it's just as real as this waking reality. And a lot of same people that are in our daily reality are also in the dream form, in the astral, whatever you want to call it, world. And we encounter them, and we encounter people who might be dead in this reality, but alive in the astral world and are not even born yet, or we never. So I really do believe that. That's my. So I'll start. I have a story that I'll tell you, and it's very interesting. In 2012, I had a ferocious nightmare, and it involved a house at the corner of a street. And I've told this a few times, but I can't stress how frightening this dream was. And I was on the ground floor, and inside it, there was a bunch of people who were pulling out drawers and closets and doors. They were looking for something. And I was looking at it. What are you doing, you nut jobs? You know, what are you doing? And then they opened the door, and I said, I wouldn't open that door if I were you. And this entity came out that looked like Casper the Ghost, with one eye held in its hand and one eye on its face here, right? You know, and it's in the forehead, but you had no other features. It was just like a white sheet, but it buzzed of an incredible form of electricity, and it felt pure evil. And it started to touch against the people who were ransacking the house, the building, the floor, and looking for things. And it was dissolving them. They were screaming. And I managed to get out the door and escaped. This then became a recurrent dream. where I kept visiting the same house. It looked like the Addams Family house, but not spooky. It was pretty American colonial house on a street corner. And the evil had gone to the second floor. And I could go around and find things I needed that were very useful in my daily life, but I could never get up the stairs because the sense of evil was like sucking me demonic. And eventually I got to the second floor and in later dreams to the third floor. And then the house was cleared. And I never dreamt about the house ever again.
I've had that same dream, Thomas.
Really?
Yeah.
There was another house I have a dream where it's where I live now, but there's an extension to the house that doesn't exist in real life.
Well, I'm sure most.
That was one of the things, Greg, that made me realize that in that reality there is an extension built onto it, but not here. And I'm decorating it and looking at it. So that's a weird series of recurring dreams I had. I'd like to hear what people have to say about that.
I'll just throw in that this will be really helpful actually when we're talking about dreams in general. You talked about this house. In dream interpretation, the house represents the dreamer's mind. And almost all my dreams take place in houses. Wow. And that's really significant. Some of them familiar, some that I've lived in, some that I haven't, but it's almost always takes place inside a house.
One of the last times I had that dream, it was so similar. It was like an old style American colonial house. There's so many similarities with what you said. I could give you a bunch of different examples of more detail of mine, but I think the last time I had that dream, and I had it for years, I finally had gotten into this one room where it felt like everything that was evil in the house was emanating from. I had finally made my way to that room and was brave enough to go in it. And when I opened this room, it was like a snapshot of back in time. And the colors changed. I always dream in color unless there's an entity. If there's an entity, it's black and gray. But this was more like a sepia type filter. So it was sort of in between all of that. And I opened the door, and it was. Have you seen the pictures from like when the Dust Bowl happened and everything is covered in dust? And there was this old woman laying in the bed, and the whole time in all of these dreams I had, it was. I always knew that whatever source of evil it was, it personified as an old woman, but not like a sweet grandma old woman. But I finally got to this room, and I opened the door, and it was the sepia filter, and this woman was laying in bed, and I was trying so hard. You know, when you're trying to run or fight or talk in a dream and you just can't get it out. And I was pushing so hard to ask her, "Who are you?" And I was finally able to say it. And I woke myself up out of the dream saying, "Who are you?" And it was like the hardest verbalization I've ever done. It was like trying to speak underwater and in outer space at the same time, but I finally got it out. And as I said that, she sat up straight up in bed and turned and looked right at me really slowly. And then I said, "Who are you?" And I woke up, and I've never had that dream again.
Wow.
How long ago was that?
That dream was probably 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Yeah, I had those dreams for years, probably 6 or 7 years.
I had a recurring dream like that. This sort of dream that you want to say something, and it always had to do with a specific person in my life. I wanted to say something to her, and I couldn't. And no sound would come out. Nothing at all. It was incredibly frustrating. And every time I woke up from that dream, sitting upright, tears streaming down my face, talking to myself, sometimes screaming. It's not like you have a night terror, and it was pure frustration of not being able to say anything. Those stopped after a while, but I had them for years.
You know, I think that's related to a very common phenomenon in dreams. And I'm sure we can all relate to some extent. And you alluded to this, Timothy, trying to run, but being unable to move, trying to get away from something, and just like being churning in treacle, being unable to speak like that. And also the sensation of falling, you know, which is, in fact, it's so common that the sensation of falling usually wakes people up.
Yep. Yeah, I've had dreams like that before with the trying to defend myself from someone attacking me, and I'll be punching back at them, but my fist will always stop within like millimeters or a quarter of an inch from striking the surface. And it's like I'm trying my hardest to fight back against someone who's attacking me, but they're just out of the reach of my fists. And no matter how much I try to get in closer on them, for whatever reason, their body just moves back from me. But it's that horribly frustrating thing of not being able to make the action, even though in your mind it's like supposed to be working.
It's like punching through jello.
Yeah, and just not even being able to hit it. Yeah.
Well, I think, Jason, what you're describing is known as the frustration dream, where there's something, and it can be completely random, or it can be very individual, very case sensitive to the person, but there's something that's just out of your grasp and you try to get it and you won't. I mean, a recurring frustration dream for myself is where I love going on train-based holidays. You know, I get to the station and something happens and I don't get in the train, and you don't know whether there is a train or not, or have they canceled the train, or what's going on. So there is the recognized phenomenon of a type of dream, which is the frustration dream.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned trains, Christian, because I was just talking to someone recently about train dreams. And I have a reoccurring dream theme around being on a train and sometimes being left behind at like a fresh air station where you get off and stretch your legs and get some fresh air. I'll be left behind, or sometimes the train crashes and I'm outside of it. But it's a theme that I've been for years. I want to say since maybe around 2015, I've been having these train dreams. And I was talking to someone about it recently, and she's been having them as well too. But it's just I found that interesting that you've got a frustration dream as well that involves a train. So another train dream person.
For me, the train has, I have a lot of affection for the train. I have a lot of affection.
Yeah,
Thomas, I think, would agree with me. Look, traveling on the trains around Ireland until they decided to spoil everything in 2020. Traveling on the trains in Ireland was lovely. I mean, Thomas would remember, you know, the Dublin to Sligo train, there was a bar and you could get a breakfast. And now there's well, until 2020, there used to be an old trolley with kind of tins of beer and sandwiches and things. Now they don't even do any food on the trains. And now you have to wear a mask on the trains, and there's all this carry on the trains. So my parents and I found the trains. We would love going on a holiday in the train. That's been ruined for us now, you know. But yeah, the train has a special place in my heart since I was a little boy. And I've dreamt about them quite a lot, you know.
Yeah, me too. I'm going on a train trip, leaving next Sunday to go visit my mom down in Southern California. But yeah, I travel by train frequently. And so, yeah, same for me. It's a very significant emotional connection to me. So of course it would show up in my dream world somehow, but there's always a theme around it that ends up being recurring.
I don't
What is
recall.
this thing? Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, Don.
You go ahead.
I was just going to say, what is this thing called traveling that you're speaking of?
Yeah.
But I want to go back to something that Thomas said. You know, what is it? Row your boat. Life is just a dream. When I think about the difference between my dream reality and my quote unquote real reality, the only difference, as far as I can tell, is that this particular dream is persistent, right? It exists. It continues every time I wake up, where the dreams that I have when I go to sleep are dreams that are different every time. And so to me, possibly the only difference between the two states is the persistence of one. And because of that, because it's persistent across days and years, that we consider this to be a real reality, right? But those other realities are just as real. They just don't last as long. Something to think about.
That entity that I saw in that first dream that destroyed all the people, I gave it the nickname of the electrical night jester because it had a sense of electricity about it and it was absurd. It was, even though I was absolutely petrified of it, it was absurd looking. It did show up in someone's dreams in a film, Communion with Christopher Walken, based on the book. There's a scene where a mechanical electrical thing walks up to him that looks very kind of similar to what I saw in the dream. And I spoke to some other people and they said they've had these similar things of a kind of a poor man's robot that appears in the dream, but it's evil. It's like evil. And in a lot of I haven't had this experience, but a lot of people who've had experience with certain entities from the Goetia, they often talk about a sound of an electrical sound, like arcing and clicking, And sometimes the smell that you get over all the electric motors, when you start an electric motor that's really old, you get a specific smell of burning oil. And they describe that. And the thing has a mechanical and clicking sound, very much like very electrical in nature. And I find that very interesting too, because, well, we all know our brains are electrically operated. Our whole body is really. And so I found that very, very interesting. This whole thing of it being electrical in nature. And that's very much how it was described in Whitley Strieber's book and in the film.
Yeah,
Did it have a smell, Thomas? I'm sorry, Greg, I keep cutting you off. Did it have a smell, Thomas? And then I'll shut up.
Not in my dream, but people have described it having the smell of an old electric motor being started up, and that smell of burning oil you might get in it. Like an old vacuum cleaner or a hairdryer that hasn't been used in years. You turn it on, you get a specific smell of burning oil that's been coagulated around the gears. And that's what they describe it like.
It's just interesting too with like what you said about the Goetia, Thomas, and pretty certain that those entities within the Goetia are jinn, right? Or were once jinn, and the idea of creating plasma through an electric motor, and just that idea of you know an entity needs to have some sort of body to occupy, right? They can't just float around without some sort of complex body to be in. So if they were able to get themselves into a ball of plasma or something, and then be able to, I don't know how they cross over the dream threshold, but that is interesting what you said about that, with people who have experience with the Goetia having these experiences in their dreams as well, because it's like you make a contract with those entities when you put them in a triangle, or when you start working with them. They're like I feel like they're like construction contractors who you hire to do a job, and you know, they stick around to get that job done, and
Eat all your food.
come into your house, eat all your food. Yep, you gotta have some discipline over them. You gotta treat them like soldiers.
Has anybody ever had a dream that came true?
Yep.
Yes.
Go ahead, tell us.
Okay, well, I'll tell you, because this is interesting. Around the time Margaret Thatcher died, the night before it was announced, I think, around 5 p.m. that she had died, and I'd dreamt about her death. She'd come and said goodbye to me. Mrs. Thatcher had said goodbye to me that night before her death was announced. Now, I had a dream in early December that the Queen had died, and it was very similar. And I won't go into too many details about what actually happened in the dream between the Queen and me, but one of the things that she did was she held my shoulder. Queen Elizabeth held my shoulder and said goodbye, and then vanished. And I woke up absolutely convinced, and I remain convinced that the Queen has died. And one of the reasons why is you actually haven't seen her out live since early December. If you look back and look, okay, there was the Queen's speech, which I think was probably recorded after Prince Philip's death. She looked ghastly in the Queen's speech, and I watched it for the first time in a long time, having had that premonition. And then Prince Andrew loses all his titles. Now, if the Queen has died or if she's incapacitated, who would take over from the Queen? Her deputy, who's Prince Charles, and he's no love for Andrew anyway. So that would explain why there was such enthusiasm to strip Andrew of all of his particular royal privileges. So that slots into place. But I don't recall between early December and now having seen the Queen, having seen any evidence, and I've been looking hard to see has there been any fresh live video footage of the Queen or photography of the Queen. All the newspapers are using file photos from earlier on in 2021, but I haven't seen anything to show that the Queen has been recorded live anywhere since the start of December 2021. So those are two significant dreams I had. They fall into another category, the premonition. So a moment ago we were talking about the frustration dream. Now we're talking about the premonition. I don't have very many premonition dreams like that. I would have one significant one once every 4 to 5 years. So I know them when they come. And I remain convinced that there was some significance in that dream about the Queen. I could say a lot more about what happened in the dream between the Queen and me, because it stayed very vivid, you know. But that, yeah, that's the type of dream I've had.
The one that I had, I've had several, but one that I had, this was years ago, maybe like 10 or 12 years ago. There was this guy that I used to totally be in love with. I was in love with him forever. He was like my high school sweetheart. And then, you know, we all left high school and hadn't seen each other in years. And we had a really bad falling out, but I had a really, really difficult time getting over it. And so it'd probably been like 5 or 6 years since I'd seen him. And I would still think about him and I would dream about him all the time. And then one night, I was actually out living on the road. I was living and traveling around the country in a van. And I had this really intense dream one night that the girl that he was dating, because we all knew each other in high school, so I knew her too, that they had a daughter. And so I kept in good contact with one of my friends that we had all known together, and we would kind of talk here regularly, and you know, he would check in on me to make sure I was okay out on the road. And so we were talking the next day, and I was like, hey, I had a dream last night that so-and-so had a kid. And he was like, holy shit, dude, last night the girl, I'm not going to say her name, she just found out yesterday that they're having a baby, and it ended up being a girl. And to this day, she's in middle school now, and I actually still know her.
Right.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
You can't doubt that one. That's like bang bingo.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's another thing I want to talk about is, before I forget, when 2020, that's what Christian just reminded me then. And this is also tied into the greater thing of, is there a conspiratorial aspect to the fact that the intelligence service or someone else might be interested in our dream lives or in dreams in particular? Do you remember around May 2020, the media all over the world ran stories about why you're having really strange dreams right now during the lockdown. Now, now, funny enough, I didn't, but like a lot of other people have told me they had incredible dreams during the lockdown and believe things they didn't, like, it's almost psychedelic. And I didn't, by the way, but it just seemed to me highly suspicious that all things like Psychology Today and all the major media outlets all over the world ran this one story that they normally would be considered consigned to like cuckoo land or this like nonsense story, but it was in mainstream media as an important thing. And I've always felt that somehow there was something somewhere doing something to our dreaming.
I'd absolutely remember that clearly, and it was so high profile. It was up there with the current attempt to explain why so many people are dying suddenly and so many people are having heart attacks when they're, you know, champion athletes or little kids or whatever. I absolutely remember that. And my dreams at the time, briefly for a few weeks, were about the apocalyptic destruction of the earth, to the point where I was waking myself up because I said, I can't take this anymore. It was, you know, just, I'm talking about, forget any visions of Armageddon you've ever seen in the movies. This was beyond this. And that thankfully lasted for a very short time.
Very interesting. I often wondered if there was something sent out through the internet to actually trigger this.
Right. And it would be, I feel like the normies or people who are really keyed into the mainstream narrative would be the easiest ones to influence with that. People who already are bought into the social engineering and everything, they would be the ones most susceptible to any, you know, any subliminal messaging, MK Ultra style stuff coming from the media.
Well, I mean, it's interesting to speculate about how they might be able to either read dreams or influence dreams. Now, I mean, in one of my own videos, I had said that I believe that the MK Ultra plot was actually designed against 75 to 80% of the population, where there had been this previous spy movie cliche of MK Ultra being a select group of people and they'd be given a trigger. I believe that the trigger in 2020 was the word global. And I was trying to actually say, well, how can I always say in my own videos, narrow it down, be specific. I believe that when they said the word global and then put it with the word pandemic, but particularly the word global, that was the trigger that made people fall into what John Waters refers to as the trance. Now, they were probably in a trance earlier anyway, but did they get into our dreams via, say, 4G radio waves, which is a bit perhaps less likely, or did they send out subliminal messages in the mainstream media? Which
I'd say it's that hypnotizing and then the suggestion, and that's the easiest way to get into people's subconscious.
I think so.
And Christian, you've really fired off something in my head right now with that. The greatest psyop before this that ran for a few years in alt media was this flat earth nonsense. They were always making fun of globes and the globe. Globe tards, global, come on, global, like a god, the ancient god Baal. And they'd put a mass transformation in the alternative scene that this, like the earth was flat through this whole thing. Now, when you said global may have been the trigger word, was that a control subject, a control group that they actually were working on using those terms? And that's amazing. Now, I really wish when the whole thing, I think you're right, global was the thing, the trigger word, like the Manchurian word. But in the alternative media, there was a distinct need to destroy and wreck the alternative scene. I mean, I have friends in England, I'll talk about this all the time. There was a really great alternative, powerful alternative media developing. And suddenly you had all these idiots coming along saying, you're a globe tart, the earth is flat, the earth is, here's the proof, and quoting the Bible and all this kind of thing. And it made it, and then just like on cue, like I thought, the mainstream suddenly said, oh, they're all flat earthers, they don't trust them. Now when Christian says that, wow.
Mm-hmm. You see,
isn't it interesting how they come out of nowhere?
Yeah. If we
listen all at the same time.
Sorry, James. If we listen to other phraseology that they use, one of them is anti. That people are conscious of how anti-vaxxers is used as a smear. Another one is
anti-needlecraft.
Sorry, yeah, but that's a term.
We'll let it.
I quoted a term that was in today's Sunday. That's actually a headline in today's Sunday Independent. That particular anti-something word that I used there. So
no problem. It's just that we did get those the other day.
Oh, God, I know. But I'm sure I'm in YouTube jail for another 14 days because of that. But anyway, there are terms that we all know are kind of flat earthy and are truthery, but the word global isn't. And my own analysis about global was people disrespect their politicians at a local level or even at a national level. They would be more skeptical about Simon Harris or Varadkar or those kind of people. But once the word global was put on, well, what that was saying to them was, well, forget your crappy local politicians, wherever you are. This is all in this together, aren't we? All over the earth. So I felt that the word global was very much an MK Ultra thing. And James, I apologize, I cut through you there. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. Where do you begin on it? But again, they just come out like hordes, all on the same day, literally, don't they?
They do.
It's organized to the level where I'm amazed that ordinary people are blind to it. Even if I was a TV soap opera watching normie, whatever, and I saw an article in all the media about don't worry about your dreams. This is perfectly normal. I would be every red flag would be set off, because it was like, why are they suddenly interested in dreams? What has this got to do with anything? And yet none of them were. And they were like, and I was reading Psychology Today that ran an article on it, and all the comments by these reasoned, rational types, and they were all saying things like, "Oh yes, I agree. It's like it's part of like we're traumatized by being blah, blah, blah." And yet not one single comment said, "Why are you even interested?"
Yeah,
and that was a red flag. It was a massive red flag.
For me, global was huge in the respect that I think we kind of see things very much the local levels. Like we've had traumas with the fires and traumas here and traumas there. And so when they said this pandemic was global, it seemed to have much more severity to it. I think it was used to have people really, really pay attention to the fact that this is a big threat. And so very much probably an MK Ultra thing. And the other thing that I wanted to add in terms of getting it into your head.
Oh, no.
dream incubation process, right? And basically what it does is it in MIT.
Can you repeat the last 20 seconds? You froze. We didn't hear it.
Oh, sorry, sweetie. Yes. And if I keep doing this, I'll just drop out. I warned Jason about that. MIT has a dream incubation technology, and I'll cut it short. Basically, it feeds you messages when you're in the hypnagogic state as you're falling asleep. And if people are like my husband, they don't go to sleep without the television being on. So having these messages seep through into a dream incubation, or a dream through this incubation process, could happen to a lot of people just by falling asleep with the TV on.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
And
or if you're sleeping too close to your phone, perhaps.
Yeah.
But that the hypnagogic thing that Venice was just talking about with, how many times, have we all watched Netflix or something where it's just in a complete trance, going through and streaming episode after episode. Just marathoning something. And that's a light but effective form of hypnotism. You're in a light trance when.
Doesn't it have to do something with the hertz that, I don't remember the numbers, but the megahertz wave that the brain operates on versus the one that is on the TV? And then when you sync with the TV, you're a large portion of your frontal cortex or something shuts down.
Yep. So you can be easily with a positive suggestion.
That was with the old televisions that had the scanner. The digital TVs, that doesn't exist, but there's nothing to stop them from digitally putting that stuff in there. You don't know, you can't detect it.
It might be worth saying a brief word about what I call hypnagogia, but or it could be hypnagogia, however you wish to pronounce it, for viewers who are not aware. This is the liminal state between waking and sleeping. It's when you're kind of drifting off. And for many people, the experience of it's characterized by mind's eye visions of weird faces. For me, anyway, it was always faces, sometimes comically distorted, sometimes really darkly disturbing, but faces. And it's this time, it is related to the dream state, I believe, because as you're moving from one state, wakefulness, through to dreaming, and there's a corresponding state called hypnopompia. I don't know why they've given it a different name. It seems to be, to me, to be more or less the same process, where you're moving from dreaming state or sleep state through to waking. And book recommendation time for people who just want to get a crash course on this, and I haven't got shares in this, Hypnagogia by Andreas Mavromatis. I think this is the book on the subject, and I did have this ready. Wow. And I like the way that I was going to bring up the subject, but somebody else did. So you can see we're all in the same wavelength. So yeah, this is the book on the subject in my opinion.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll have to get that one. That's one of my most favorite subjects.
How do people feel about, I think it's true, but I'm sometimes dubious about it as well, what the symbolism of something in a dream means. Like, if you see a snake or you see a bird, it has a specific symbolism. Is that true, or is that new age bunk? I often wonder about it.
I think a lot of that might have to do with cultural stuff too. Like for Native Americans, that's definitely a thing.
Yeah.
I can't speak for any other cultures other than the one that I've grown up in. So sometimes I feel like there's symbolism in it, and sometimes I feel like it's just whatever my brain decided to use for me to show me something. It's not actually like, I'm not going to go look up what does a coyote mean, and then, take all of that and then overlay it into whatever my own interpretation is going to be. Sometimes I wake up knowing exactly what it is, and other times I don't. And when I don't know, I kind of just let it be. And if I figure it out later, then that's great. And if not, it's still in there somewhere. And if I ever need to process it out consciously, that'll happen when it needs to. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
Different things mean different things to different people as well. There's not one universal.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not.
And it makes sense too, because the animals that you'd have in one continent don't exist in another.
Right.
So why would you dream it, especially if you've never seen them firsthand?
Can I tell you about a dream that I had in 2020 when they were going on about everybody having dreams? I had one of the most incredible dreams I've ever had in my life, that was at a stone circle that I don't know if it's actually real or if it's one that I've created in that space. There was beings going around this, like 3 beings going around this circle. And I knew I was dreaming. So I thought I would test it. And I got my phone out, because my phone never works in my dream. And I put my phone up, and I actually could see what was happening in the circle. And I thought, oh, this is different. So I was watching it. I was watching these beings going around this, and a beam of light came towards the phone, hit the phone, and then these images started appearing in the spaces between the frames.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa.
That's
The
amazing.
information that was coming through, I couldn't see it in the dream until I picked up the phone and pointed it at the circle.
You
And
know,
that was
is-
while everyone was having these crazy dreams.
That reminded me just now of a dream I had way back in probably like 2008, 2009. I had this really intense dream. It was a series of dreams. And I was seeing certain shapes. Like I would go to this place, wherever it was, this interdimensional place or wherever it was in my dream, and I would see these huge shapes. And then this one particular night, I saw this shape. And then a couple of days later, I picked up a copy of Nexus magazine, which actually is published out of Australia. It's like one of their alternative news. They post all kinds of weird Fortean stuff. And they had just posted the most recent flap, I guess, of crop circles that had popped up in England. And down to the very smallest detail, 2 of the crop circles that they had photographed and featured in that magazine were 2 of the shapes that I had seen in my dream a couple of nights before. Like, and they were intricate designs. So that was that. They're different, but Jade, your dream reminded me of that one. I haven't thought about that dream in years.
Well, I still haven't quite figured that one out yet. I just know that there's a connection between technology, the circles, and the information that was coming through.
Yeah, and what you said, Jade, about it being between the frames, the
Yeah.
flicker rate, it's almost like with the, the 60 frames per second that they do over here with the full HD or whatever it is, that, in between that, there's a flash where there's a negative space in there where that,
Yeah.
if there is some sort of,
Metadata.
metadata being transferred through in that pause there where there's, 60 frames per second, there's just as many frames per second where that's not there. It's just a series of still pictures that we perceive as motion, but in between there could be some kind of entity inside it or some kind of information. Yeah. But
Well,
I
interestingly, it was set outside of some kind of house, but it was a house that belonged to somebody that was some kind of Freemason or something like that. In the dream, I knew who it was, but when I woke up, I hadn't got a clue who it was. But I was showing people around and telling them who this person was, and this was this place belonged to him, these things belonged to him, and and then I walked outside, and this circle was there outside.
Wow.
So it'd be interesting to try and find out, who it was that I was telling everybody about in the dream, who had this circle outside of their home.
Can you remember how the circle was organized? Like, could you draw it out or sketch it?
Probably not. No, I painted the beings. I didn't paint the circle. I painted the beings and ancestors awakening. So there was skulls and stuff on the pictures as well, with these 3 beings going around. It's interesting that I didn't paint the stones, just the beings.
Yeah.
One day you'll stumble upon that stone.
Probably.
I'm opening my drink, everybody. Cheers.
Cheers.
Hey, Christian, I got to say, it looks like you're wearing a yellow turtleneck. Now, back in the 80s, me and some of our friends used to joke about the one item of clothing that no man could pull off. And we used to say, oh, the lemon polo. No guy could wear a lemon polo and just rock it. And here it is now manifested in reality. You nailed it. What a look.
When it comes to pulling things off, I'm an old hand.
It kicks ass with that leather jacket. It really does.
That's what I was going to say. It's the leather. Yeah, leather brings it home.
I do think you have to match and mix. And yeah, I mean, there's certain things you can wear. Well, no, I mean, you have to be as brazen as I could wear fucking anything. I could, sorry to be conceited, but I get away with wearing crazy shit.
By the way, your hair is looking really good.
Thank you. It's just done today. We just expired some of the gray today. Thank you. Thank you. I'll celebrate with a cigarette. Thank you.
Cheers.
Oh, by the way, did you see my graphic? Hey guys, did you see my graphic?
Yeah.
Yes, I got a graphic today. Isn't that cool? Isn't that good? That was and it took me blood, sweat, and tears to do that thing, to get around all the geeks and all of the booby traps the geeks had put. I use a thing called chroma cam. So it's a chroma key type camera that you can use with Zoom or these other kind of things, because Zoom doesn't really allow you to bring in transparencies like that, but you need to use another program. But I'm chuffed with that, because people are saying, where's his channel? Where can we see his videos? He's not putting stuff up on YouTube anymore. Bloody sure I'm not putting stuff up on YouTube. They don't let me anymore. So, if you want to see all I've doubled my following on Odyssey. I now have 6 followers. I used to just have 3. So here, I started cigarette.
You get
Dan.
quite a lot more views, don't you?
Sorry?
I must be one of the 3.
I'm the 4th.
Has anybody ever had a dream where you've smelled things?
Yes, absolutely. Lots of times. Absolutely. And again, it's a gaslight. They say that you can't smell in dreams. That's like the same gaslight as saying that people shouldn't have an internal. People who are talking to themselves are nuts. Whereas now we're discovering it's just NPCs who don't have the internal dialogue. And, if you're talking to yourself, it's a sign that you're actually rehearsing things. And this leads on to our next category of dream for the evening, the dress rehearsal dream. The dress rehearsal dream is one where I believe you are being tested for a traumatic event or a potentially traumatic event that might happen in real life. And the dream is testing you to see how you would respond. So, for example, to hypothesize, you're attacked in a dream. Would you fight or would you flight? So does anybody agree with me about the dress rehearsal dream, that other particular type of dream that I've identified?
Not heard of that one.
It's new to me.
Yeah, that's a new one actually, Christian. That many different categories of dream, but that is a new one, so that's interesting. And
I've experienced it, the dress rehearsal dream.
And just to answer another of your points, no, I don't recall ever actually smelling anything in a dream, so I will say it's never happened. And as far as things in dreams, in terms of 5 senses, it appears to me that a lot of the communications appears to be telepathic. I don't recall hearing things in dreams either. It seems when one dream character or entity communicates something to me that there's no sound. I just understand it.
I could sort of liken the experience of deja vu to the preparation of something to come, because I would always, not these days, I dream a lot less than I used to, if at all. And I would be able to recognize events that were happening about a minute to 2 minutes at most, before they actually happened. Something familiar was going on and I would know, and suddenly the thing that I thought was going to happen would happen. And I'm wondering whether or not that's also a form of dress rehearsal dreaming that you're going to get. But deja vu is the manifestation of it in some way.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
This is one for the parents, although I suppose it could cap on anybody. I'm researching for a big project at the moment, which will be announced in time. And one of the things I stumbled upon was that J.R.R. Tolkien had a recurring dream of being killed in Atlantis and being drowned by a wave that swept over the landscape and destroyed all the farms and fields and everything. What's interesting about this was his parents and his son, Michael, had exactly the same dream. Although they didn't know it years later till he casually mentioned it to a friend, and they both told him, we have exactly the same dream, exactly the same landscape. So we have hereditary ancestral memory dreams, whatever. Anyone else have experience where your parents or your kids have had the same dream as you?
Yes.
No, not that I know of.
No, I've had those so far out. I won't discuss them, honestly, but I've had dreams, honestly, and I've had it in work. I'd have a dream at night, and then I'd come into the school the next day, and the teacher who I was dreaming about at night, she and I would continue the conversation. It's far out. That has happened to me on a number of occasions. We've continued the conversation the next day in real life.
Yeah, the closest I've come to that, what you said, Thomas, is very similar to what Christian has just said. In meeting someone in a dream that I know, and I remember this specific dream. It's only ever happened once, and saying to them, "What are you doing here?" And they said, "Well, I dream as well." Wow. And then they were having a conversation with this person very shortly afterwards, and just saying, telling them about, "I dreamt about you. And I said to you, wait, what are you doing here?" And she said, "Well, what, you mean that we were in that cafe?" Yes. Mm-hmm. So what, we were in the same dream at the same time? That happened just once, but that's one piece of, let's call it evidence that there's something going on here. You know, that's back at the start of all these conversations, that the dream sphere, the dream realm is just as real, if not more real, than the reality that we're all sharing at this moment.
It won't surprise you that me and my boys regularly have very similar dreams. I'll wake up and discuss in the morning, so were you there? Did you pick any of that up? And more often than not, one of them will remember.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, well, they're wired in, my two.
What was so interesting in the school that what was so interesting in the school I was teaching in was that when I went into the staff room the next day and met that woman teacher, it wasn't in any way, she wasn't freaked out by it. And actually, funnily enough, neither was I. We carried on the conversation that we'd had in the dream the night before, as if this is the kind of thing you do every day. It wasn't as if the two of us go, ooh, you know. And that was what struck me, that just by instinct, the two of us knew that there was nothing particularly crook about it, but you know, she took it for granted in the same way I took it for granted. It was only afterwards I kind of thought about that was really something from the Twilight Zone altogether, you know.
There's so much that we've lost. Oh, sorry, Thomas, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I often laugh at absurdities in dreams. And it's a very strange laugh. It's like a laugh that is in my soul, like rather than a laugh that's bellowing out of my mouth. Like I do remember one time having a dream of a man who was a penis, and he was wearing a Mexican sombrero on top. And I just laughed so loud in the dream, but it wasn't like, it's a very interesting laugh. It's not like the laugh like, ha, 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 ha. It was like a genuine chuckle deep inside my solar plexus. Yeah. Is the only way I could describe it.
Yeah, I know exactly.
My friends call that the witch laugh when I do it, because it comes out so deep. But I just wanted to say, though, it's, in terms of the importance of them, there's this great book that I just read by, it's called Sandtalk. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, but both the Indigenous Australians and the Hopi Indians would basically get up every morning and have a meeting and discuss the dreams that they had. And it was very, very much a part of their culture to kind of share and see what information had come in during the night into these tribes. And it's kind of another another example of like how much we've lost. Like this was just as Christian was saying, just a normal part of, okay, what did you get last night? Were you there? What did we need to know? And that's what they did. And so that these cultures took these things very, very seriously.
Yeah, the Druids used to, when they were given a question to answer regarding, say, kingship or something, they would slaughter a bull, drink its blood, and sleep under a tree, and were given the answer to the question in the dream, and upon waking would be able to provide the answer to whatever was needed regarding, say, succession of kings or something like that. I found that very interesting, how dreams in some cultures, and probably in the Native Americans, are used to actually solve problems. You know, it's almost like where you go. It's like the council in Lord of the Rings, where they're all met up in Rivendell. It's like you meet up in people in your dreams to solve a problem in the real world.
It's like a shamanic process, then, isn't it? You know, like taking ayahuasca. Or the shaman of the tribe doing whatever he needs to do, and then coming back with, this is what I've been told. This is what we must do. This is the answer.
Well, in the temple of Apollo of Delphi, I think this is where the term dream incubation actually comes from, that MIT is stealing. You would go to the temple, you would undergo these rituals, these sacraments, and then you would go in there specifically to sleep and have a question answered. Right. And so, yes, shamanistic. Yes, to get your question answered. Yes, we're kind of bringing it back now with the technology, but it was a thing for ancient cultures.
Kimberly, I was going to say one thing that, oh, sorry, was that you Christian?
It's just Kimberly hasn't, I'm wondering what Kimberly's thinking of hearing here.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to jump in a second and say, Christian, going back to the dress rehearsal, I have had a dress rehearsal dream. 3 months before I actually got pregnant with my daughter, I had a dream where I gave birth. I felt my water break, and it was not a traumatic experience. And it mirrored my actual experience when I did give birth to my daughter 9 months later. It was not traumatic. It was actually very easy for me. So yes, that is my dress rehearsal dream.
That very much supports the notion that it allows us to process our emotions kind of in advance of when something significant happens. James,
Yes.
We've been out of luck tonight. I've been cutting across you all the time tonight. I'm terribly sorry. You were going to say something.
That's okay. I mean, the more of us there are, the harder it gets, I suppose. Not to mention the various delays we have with our connections, I suppose. I was just going to say, I've worked with tons of Native Americans when I was in the oil fields, and it was, they would openly just talk about dreams. I would usually have to drive a bunch of them back for about, a 5-hour drive after we'd been in the middle of nowhere, and they'd be openly talking about dreams like it was, nothing. It was quite good. And I noticed that you can't have the same discussion with your average Westerner, because most of them think, well, for a start, most of them don't seem to even have deja vu, or they won't acknowledge it exists or something like that. It's a weird thing for them to talk about most of the time.
I think many of them don't dream. I think, they don't dream significantly. And we have to say what has done this. And I'm inclined to think that it's probably television. Because earlier on in tonight's conversation, even we were talking about the effect, particularly Thomas mentioned the significance of the old cathode tube ray tellies and what they were like when you had your own piece of 3 Mile Island in the corner of the room, where in comparison with, the flat digital screen tellies now, I do believe it's only in the past, it's since 2020, I've begun to see evil in television. I used to think television was quite a benevolent medium. I still think it has a great potential for benevolence, but I've seen evil in mass media television since 2020. And
I think it's the habit too. It's the habit.
Yeah. Do you know households that you'd go into and the goddamn fucking telly'd always be on? And they'd say, oh, we leave it on because, and I mean, there was a family actually, I remember, and reflecting upon them, they were the NPCs. They were an NPC family, I remember. And they'd sit in, watch telly, and they'd watch any crap on telly. They'd watch Bullseye. Thomas, do you remember Bullseye? And they'd watch any shit. Or do you remember, Greg? Do you remember on ITV? Or Jay, do you remember 321?
Yeah, Ted, something or other, wasn't he?
Yeah.
They would watch any.
He was probably really good at sex, though. Go ahead.
Doing the sex.
No, I can't unsee that. I'm going to fucking dream about that now.
Thanks.
But I remember that
people have, for ages, have gone, again, slightly related to shamanic experiences. They've gone into, into caves, or they've gone into the wilderness, like the Jesus character apparently did, to get away from things like Moses going on to whatever he did, a mount or mountain. The idea being sensory deprivation. So take away this external stimulus and deepen your inner experience. So I would advocate a form of sensory deprivation for people in the modern, digital media matrix that everyone, this sort of digital soup that so many people are living in. And I think that the lives perhaps that a lot of us here live, maybe not consuming that much electronic media and maybe paying attention to our inner lives is a form of sensory deprivation in the most positive way. It's like, just make space for the inner voice, make space for the more subtle, energies and resonances to reach you. Because when you're saturated in all this crap, whatever the contemporary version of 321 or bullseye is, when you're saturated in that, it's just, there's no bandwidth left.
There's no bandwidth.
January 1st, our TV died, and it's been the best fucking gift of 2022 thus far.
Yep.
What I do remember about that NPC family was, as I said, you'd be sitting in with them and the telly'd be on and they'd flick, it's interesting. I'm only remembering this about them. They were ahead of everybody with gadgets. They had a video recorder and a satellite dish and a big color telly with a remote. They had a remote control before anyone had shit like this. But I do remember one particular thing they'd always say. They'd flick it over and there'd be my favorite pot plant or 321 or a celebrity toilet cleaner or some shit would be on telly. And they'd say, oh, well, we leave it on because it's the best thing on. Why not switch the fucker off? Mm. Why not just, and they didn't want to have to deal with the sensory, as Greg called it, the sensory deprivation of it being switched off. Will we have to have an intelligent conversation or something? Well, I don't know, play cards or, and to what extent now over their lifetime did that flatten and lobotomize their ability to dream? I don't know the answer, but it's worth thinking about.
Yeah.
Actually, Christian, come to think of it, now that you mentioned that, there were lots of reports. I can't remember where I read it entirely, but I was reading lots of reports, particularly in one period in the early 2000s, and I'm not entirely sure how I got there. But what it was is where people were sort of making reports that they would go around people's houses that would have the television on all the time. And then what would happen is that the people that they visited would have no memory that they had had visitors that day. So when, their friends that came around had spoken to them, they come back to them and say, that day that I came around or whatever it happened to be. And the person who they visited has no recollection at all that they were there in the slightest.
Certainly that NPC family would be like that. I mean, they lived not far from us and there were people you could hang with and the kids were roughly the same age as me. But you reflect upon them now and they were very different. And they're very different from my mother and father. This may sound pretentious. From a very early age, about 6 of that, I would get the programs out of the newspaper and decide what I was going to watch. And if there was nothing that I wanted to watch, I just didn't turn the telly on. And I mean, I must think at the age of 6 now, I must have been very goddamn special when I compare myself to the rest of them. When I think about that now, how many 6-year-olds say, well, I think I'll get out.
I love that you brought that up though, because I used to live with I was actually born at my grandma's house, not at her house, but my mom lived at her house when I was born. And I lived with my grandma till I was probably 4 or 5. And then out of all the grandkids, I was the only one that ever moved back in with her in adulthood to help her when she got sick. And my grandma loved TV. She was a dancer when she was younger and she used to make all of her own dresses. And so our thing was always watch old movies. And so over the years, TV time became synonymous with like hang out with grandma time. And so it became this creature comfort thing for me. And I realized though, especially when the TV died here, how much of that comfort had turned into an addiction. And overcompensating with comfort for other things that I really needed to be doing that actually brought me more satisfaction in life, like reading and walking and writing and whatever else. So it was a weird juxtaposition. I had to find that break where like the joy and the comfort and the memory and the nostalgia of watching TV turned into something that wasn't healthy for me anymore. So I still really enjoy every now and then, watching an old movie or something and remembering my grandma that way. But then, yeah, just like we were talking about earlier, the endless streaming and episode after episode of marathoning turned into something really toxic.
I haven't had a TV in the house in over 20 years. When I say TV, I mean Sky or getting a signal in. I have a monitor and I love watching films. I have a big DVD collection, but I haven't had that. Now, one of the things I did notice when I got rid of the signal, TV, the actual terrestrial, whatever it was, digital TV, satellite TV, was the place got much warmer. It was less cold. And I spoke to some people about this, and they said it's probably because you're less sitting around watching. No, and I said, but I never did that kind of watching of TV. I would watch something I liked, switch it off, and leave. Just the physical act of removing the TV from the house made the house warmer. Now, that's remarkable, I think. That tells you it was sucking the life energy out of the place at some level.
Well,
That's why I think you watch too much TV, you forget the dreams are all messed up, just like James said.
My folks have started switching the TV off when I go around to see them now, because I complained that much that it was on all the time. So they actually put it off now when I go around.
I used to fix the old TVs, and people would be quite surprised if they see what an old TV was like. You know, at the back of the tube, which is kind of, there's a thing here that fires the electrons onto the phosphor coating on the inside of the tube. You know how many volts that thing is charged up to? 40,000. You're having 40,000 volts fired at, these are the old TVs now, fired at you. That's energized in order to energize a phosphor coating on the inside of a screen. If you open up any old TV, you'll see a sticker on the back of the tube saying danger high voltage. So that's how much energy was needed in order to actually create the picture, the 625 or the 405 scanning on the screen. And that was how much energy was needed to do that. It was low ampage, but it was high voltage, but it was still deadly if you accidentally touched it. And it always seemed amazing to me that they needed that much energy to actually ignite the screen. And I always thought it just seemed too much, because I remember when Sony came out with these nifty handheld portable TVs. I know we're going off topic, but it's interesting. They were running on 9-volt batteries, where you didn't have, and they had a screen about that size. So they'd figured out a way to actually energize the screen without the high voltage, which made me think that the high voltage was some kind of thing to direct that against us. You know, it just seemed so unnecessary, and an enormous amount of voltage pointing at the family in the room. And then, you know, from a conspiratorial point of view, you look at the invention of television. It was invented all by occultists. And the Crookes tube, the first ever one ever made, the symbol that he projected onto the phosphor coating was the Maltese cross, which is an occult symbol. And they were all Masons and everything. So you really do wonder, you know, like with the whole thing of mass formation, transformation, dream, you know, brainwashing today. We hear about it a lot now, but I wonder if they've been doing that forever with the old TVs.
Well, there's a whole bunch of movies from Poltergeist through to They Live through to Halloween 3, where the negative consequences of the story are impossible without television.
In the rain, when she comes through the TV.
Yep.
Movie fucking terrified me.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Something that I always found very interesting was the transition to colour television in the United Kingdom, because they invented a new system, which started in 1968. And ostensibly, the British system was designed to record a colour image, where the previous TV systems, NTSC in America, Never the Same Colour was the nickname for it. They put colour on top of a black and white image. The Brits developed from scratch a new system. But I remember, if you look at the 1971 Eurovision in Dublin, where the BBC Northern Ireland lent a load of cameras to RTE to do a colour Eurovision, the cameras were the size of a Mini. They were goddamn fucking enormous cameras in the original British colour television cameras, you know. And again, you wonder, first of all, why were the Brits wouldn't consider any system that involved the transference of colour onto a black and white image. The Brits insisted on developing a grab colour image system. So they started fresh. It was done also with the Germans. It was done by the British government, but they used a lot of German technology for it. And they waited 8, 9, 10, 11 years before they allowed the BBC and the IBA to go colour, until they had this system in place. It started on New Year's Day, 1968. It ended on the 31st of December, 2013. That one system ran that long. That's how robust it was. It was an exceptionally robust system. But then you wonder, what was involved in it, and why were they so driven on, I mean, the putting it was brilliant. You know, British colour television was the best in the world in the 70s. It was a brilliant picture and brilliant definition. But why? And, you know, as Thomas said, the receiving television sets had goddamn 40,000 volts in them. Oh, Christ alone knows what those cameras had. Those original British colour television cameras had, you know. Sorry, we have strayed off topic, but it's geeky and we're geeks, and it's, hey, you know.
Oh, it's really good information. It's good stuff to know.
To bring it back to dreams via Greg mentioned horror films. I remember being really traumatized by Nightmare on Elm Street when it first came out. The concept of being murdered in your dreams by this Freddy Krueger character, and the kids being, you know, keeping themselves awake in order not to be, for Freddy to get them. I just thought it was a brilliant concept, but it also made me think, if people who die suddenly in their sleep for no reason, were they actually murdered in the dreamland?
Were they scared to death?
Or killed, or had an accident in the dream world?
Yeah.
Now you've really given me the creeps. That's there's too much credibility to that, Thomas. That's, you know, Venice is laughing here, but you know,
no, I'm not,
hey,
because I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you. It is creepy.
All right.
Yeah.
Do you know something? Finally, the Director General of RTE is going to catch up with me for all my Odyssey videos. This is what's it. They'll get their own back in me in my dreams. That's how RTE will do it.
Has anybody ever been killed in their dreams?
No.
I
you
had
have to ask
3
them.
of those the other day. Oh,
I have one specific dream that I remember. I was shot in the head in a dream.
yep.
And I went through whatever that like medium place is, and then I woke up and I was terrified. I was bawling. I was sweating. I remember the whole vivid experience, even to the point where I could see the bullet. Like I was kidnapped in my dream, and I could, when they shot me, I saw, like I switched out of seeing it through, you know, my eyes, and then I saw the bullet traveling through like my skull and my brain and shit.
Whoa.
And then it went dark. Yeah, and I can't even really describe what that like in between state was, because it happened really fast, and then I woke up. That might be the only time I was actually killed in my dream. And luckily, I woke up. But yeah.
So they didn't get you.
No, I was back, motherfuckers. I came back.
It's quite interesting, isn't it? Sorry, was that you, Greg?
Oh yeah, but please carry on. I've said enough.
Yeah, I probably have to. No, it's interesting, isn't it, how those dreams happen where you can see it happening to you from the outside. Yeah. It suddenly switches to an outside, like there's another camera angle going on.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, you're absolutely right. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that until you mentioned it, James. Those dreams where there are these switching camera angles. Then does that provoke the question? Does the switching camera angle, is that something that we had conditioned into us by television?
I almost think that
either that or it's somebody else.
Or there's, you know, the idea that, and with certain spiritual practices, that before a long time ago, we had the ability to perceive outside of the body, being exterior to the body with perception. So literally being able to look at your body from a third person perspective as it's walking down the street, or being able to
used to do that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I could go up into the room and watch myself playing with little kids.
My dad had experiences like that as a kid. But just that idea
I
that
think one of the
go ahead.
No, sorry. I apologize. I've been cutting through a lot of people tonight. I apologize. I think one of the overarching things that's worth addressing overall with dreams is that dreams are very closely linked to the psychic and to the occult and to beyond there, to that other dimension. And sometimes we have dreams. As I said, I had a dream where I met a colleague in the dream. We continued the conversation in the staff room the next day. So that's proof to me that there's a psychic element to dreaming. But I think, you know, again, Western society is frightened of accepting the fact that there's a psychic world out there, and that the dreams are, in many ways, Shakespeare described dreams as death's counterfeit in Macbeth, you know, and that dreams are possibly, well, actually they are. I mean, I've lived in proof of it. They're a gateway to the psychic world and to beyond. Sorry, Jason, I apologize.
Makes you wonder, sorry, I don't mean, sorry, Jason. Just quickly, it makes you wonder about Freud and his dream analysis. Was that co-opting the Western dream? Sorry, Jason.
It's all good. Yeah, but that idea of being able to perceive the body or have perceptions exterior to the body is something that many spiritual practices have talked that at one point us as humans here on earth have had that ability to go out, to journey out of body, so to speak, during a waking conscious moment of the day.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about with when I was a little kid. That wasn't in a dream. I would go to daycare or kindergarten or wherever I was, and I would be playing with kids and blocks and Play-Doh or whatever they put, and then I would just go up into the corner of the room, and I remember it very vividly. I could see I was watching myself do stuff.
Right.
Oh, that's out of body experience related to near-death experience, and it indicates that this meat bag, this is not me.
I'd have to dig a little bit further, but I know that there was something when I was born that they had to resuscitate me, and I've heard that there's something with if you cut, when you're a newborn and going through the birthing process, sometimes the babies come with the cords wrapped around and they're not breathing, or they swallow something really toxic. I think that's what I don't remember what happened to me. I'm not in contact with my mom anymore, so I can't really ask for that. But I do know that there was something that when I was born, I had to be resuscitated.
Same. Yeah, I was born, the umbilical cord was around my neck, and they had to C-section me, and I think I swallowed amniotic fluid, and they had to pull that out of my lungs to get me going again. But yeah, same thing.
So the tether was already a little fucked up.
Yeah, and it's just that thing that kids, by the time they're like 7, usually have, can sometimes have past incarnation experience where they will have recall of their past incarnation, and sometimes this out of body experience type of thing, but it tends to go away by the time they're about 7, 8, 9 years old.
Okay, I was just wondering, speaking of these, sorry, was that you, Kimberly?
Yes, but go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I just had a weird one that came to mind, so you have to bear with me on this. Speaking of the outer body thing, and for some reason I'd forgotten it, and I don't know why, because it's pretty significant to me at least. And about 1999, I just bought an apartment, and so I was, I'd been out for a big run, and I got back to my place, and I think it was like a 20-miler, something along those lines, and I was pretty tired. And I literally got indoors, and I'd had on my futon, because that's all I had pretty much, I had my quilt, it was all bunched up, and I just pretty much laid on this big lump of quilt. And I woke up, because I was laying on my front, and I woke up to the feeling of something pushing on my back at the time and whispering something that sounded something like Latin in my ear. I have no idea what language it was, but it was whispering. And I can't even tell if my eyes were open or if I was just familiar with where I was at the time. And I remember doing a push-up to try and push myself against this thing. And for some reason, I had some growling noise coming out of me that I could never normally do, assuming that was actually happening to me at the time. And then it all went away. But what I thought about it was quite interesting, was that when I woke up from that and I looked behind me, there's nothing there, but the gas on my stove was on, and it wasn't on when I came back indoors. So yeah, that was what I thought was weird. So I opened my patio door and made sure there was nothing that I was going to switch off or on. I just opened it and turned off the stove. But the point was, it wasn't on when I walked indoors, because if it was, I would have smelt it, because it would have been on before I left. So I wonder what that was for, whether that was something there to wake me up or to kill me at the time. I don't know. I still can't figure it out.
Kimberly, you shared some really good ones in the group. Did you want to talk about those?
Oh, the one that I had a couple of days ago where I saw my news feed exactly how I saw it yesterday or the day before, whenever I posted that.
That was really
it was very interesting. I mean, I'm looking at the newsfeed and scrolling through it thinking, I've seen this before. And then I remembered the dream. And in my dream, I remember saying, I've seen this before, but I didn't. Because in the dream, I remember saying, you have not seen this. And I just kind of, put it out of my mind. And then when it happened a couple of days ago, it was bizarre. It was it was almost like deja vu, but I knew it wasn't because I remembered exactly the dream and the way that it happened. And I have these dreams sometimes where, you know, I will have one and I won't remember it the next day. I'll remember it, an event will trigger it a day or two, or even weeks later. So my dreams are kind of bizarre in that way. I don't always remember them when I wake up, unlike my daughter, who remembers every single one.
How old is she?
She is 21.
Nice.
Yes. And my son, I'm trying to get him to, you know, to also share his dreams as well. And he does. He's almost 12.
Okay.
But he's not as open about it as Catherine. But, you know, it's, but one reoccurring dream that I've had, and Thomas, going back to your, like the early American dream house or whatever, I've had the White House with big windows. In my case, it's set in New Orleans. And each room that I would go into represents a different area. Like it'll be the Atlantic Ocean one day, or it'll be a jungle another day. But I had the dream, the house dream for probably about 15 years. And I haven't had it for a very long time, maybe since I was in my early 20s. But a reoccurring dream that I've had for 2 decades now is waking up and being in the back seat of a moving car. And no one's driving.
I've been there, yeah.
And sometimes I could take control of the wheel from the back seat. Sometimes I can do it telepathically. Sometimes I have to do it physically.
Have you ever had that dream and then the car drives into water?
Yeah.
No.
About a week ago.
Really?
Yeah. And it was freaky. It was going down a waterway, but I was managing to keep it going.
Yeah. Yeah. Like what Kimberly was saying with sometimes being in the back seat, or, you know, sometimes I get to move up to the passenger seat in the front. Yeah. When it's that situation and the car's going into water, you know, in water, what represents emotions and dreams. So that's like an unstable emotional situation. But
it's interesting what Kimberly said about New Orleans. And it's funny enough that the three of us have dreamt about this American style home, you know, it's like colonial architecture. I identified where the dream house was in mine. It was in Montreal. I find it interesting that that's another French city as well. So that's weird. Like, you know, the same kind of house, but in 2 French-speaking cities, or cities associated with the French.
Mm-hmm.
A little story to briefly relate, and this goes back to what you were saying, Thomas, about has anyone had dreams that have come true? And I'll develop that into an idea for a potential project for people who are interested in dreams. When I was a teenager and had never had a girlfriend and had no sexual experience, we can all understand the charge of energy you have as you become a sexual being. You know, the desire, the mystery of it, like what's happening to me, you know, what is this? These things that are awakening within me, what do they mean? You know, and the confusion of it sometimes. And I just wanted to be with a girl so much. And, you know, look, I'm opening myself up here. You know, I really,
it's awesome.
I really wanted.
Why do one of your arms look like Popeye and the other one doesn't?
Not anymore. But I remember at one point, and I had this dream, and there was this almost like mermaid type, you know, female girl in this dream with long flowing blonde hair. And it's so long ago now that the detail of the dream is lost, but I remember it being very profoundly moving. There was nothing really sexual about it, but it was emotional, you know, and it seemed to speak to something that I was feeling, these urges that I was feeling. And when I woke up from it the next morning, it moved me so much that I wanted to experience it again. I was like, I want to see her again. I want to see her again. And the next night I dreamt and she was there again. almost like responding to my desire. And then my first ever girlfriend, several years later, corresponded to her.
Wow.
This long flowing blonde hair, and this fringe. I remember, this it was of its time, fringe that. And so I was talking about a project, designing dreams. So I have that second dream because I willed it so much. I said, I want to go back to that place. I want to see that person again. And then it happened. So I'm wondering, dreams seem to respond to our waking experience. A lot of people talk about dreams. It's a way of processing, what happens to you in life. I wonder if if any of us consciously said, I want to have that experience. I want to go to that place. I want to have a dream of this nature. Could that, if we willed it strongly enough, could that perhaps manifest in our dreams? And it's something I only thought of while we've been having our conversation.
Dress rehearsal
yes.
Guide or something.
would that be the dress rehearsal? The dress rehearsal dream.
That could fall into that category, I suppose.
There you go.
Very angelic, it sounds, very like spirit guide kind of vibe.
And a water being, again, that's like an emotional state of being, like you said, you wanted to experience that again so much, and it was an emotional thing. It wasn't so much a mental exercise, and you were feeling that, for her to present as a water being. And then I'm curious if that lady that manifested in your life later, was she like a real emotional type woman?
Yeah, quite counter, astrologically speaking, quite counter to me in as how I am. And the interesting thing was, when I met her, she was married with 2 kids, and it was like, okay, so this is not going to happen.
Fuck. Yeah. Well, yeah. When those things shift over and they don't quite translate all the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Home wreck, are you?
Hey, he dreamed it. Fair game.
Girl of his dreams, literally.
Girl of his dreams, yeah.
Yeah, I've had it.
Sorry, Jason.
Oh, I was gonna say, I've had a tremendous amount of dreams that come true, but they're all very terribly mundane things. Like the most recent one I had was day before yesterday. I took a short nap before I went out to work, and I do delivery driving for work. And I was dreaming about a graphic equalizer on a computer. So when you're looking at sound, there's all the frequencies, and there's this very detailed scoop of an equalizer. And then I woke up and I went out to go drive, and I put a CD into my car, which I haven't used the CD player in my car yet. So the EQ on it was totally what the last person who owned this one was. And sure enough, what I needed to do was pretty much scoop out the EQ exactly the way it was in my dream. So it's like what I was looking at on a graphic equalizer was exactly what I needed to do to the music to make it sound good to my ears while I was out driving doing deliveries. And I have dreams like that all the time, where I'll see 2 pennies and a quarter fall in a certain pattern, and then I'll be washing clothes and 2 pennies and a quarter fall out of the pair of pants that same way. And it's like there's always just these little everyday. I don't want to call them mundane, because it is incredibly magical. That it's like seeing something from my day. But it's like, I feel like if I pay attention to those things more, the symbolism that gets revealed to me in my dreams,
It's a practice run.
Yeah, it's a practice run. So once I'm done with preschool, so to speak, it's like, I can get into some of the more kindergarten lessons once I get into my 40s and 50s. And right now it's just like, okay, are you paying attention, motherfucker? Like, okay, you see that something's happening here in your dreams, and then you see it in your actual everyday waking life. Like, are you paying attention, kind of thing?
Like a synchronicity.
Yeah, like a synchronicity that's just nearly identical. Or like I said with the EQ thing, it wasn't the same visual, but it was exactly what I needed to do to scoop out the frequencies in my car to make it sound better.
Mundane but practical and useful.
Yep.
So it's useful. It's a useful element to dreaming. I was just gonna say, it's been well known forever that, and quantified and validated by science, that if you stop dreaming, after a while you become psychotic.
Yep.
You actually become mentally ill, very much so. And this is the real reason why heavy pot smokers, heavy stoners, heavy cannabis users always go into psychosis. It's not because so much because of the drug. It's because they stop. Anyone who's a stoner will tell you they never dream. They never dream.
Yeah, they don't process anything.
Yep.
Yeah. You know, the heavy ones, they can, you know, the regular users. And that's why it's that's the real reason why they go into psychosis, not the actual substance.
Yeah. Because it's so interesting with cannabis. It's like, with my experience with it when I was younger, it's that it does this thing where it makes, I don't want to say it in a weird way, but it makes life more interesting, whatever it is. Like if you're watching a movie or if you're eating something, like the flavor of the bag of chips you're eating is that much more heightened, or the complexity of the colors and the film and the characters are just that much more heightened. And then you take that away and it's like everything in your normal everyday world seems dull compared to that, you know? So it's like, I would imagine, you know, same thing with if all of their processing is done in front of the TV and everything, there's nothing there for them to process at nighttime. You know, there's no dreams to be had. And, you know, before you know it, they're making, you know, flat earth videos.
But those experiences at that amplified level is available without using substances.
Exactly.
Yep. That's when you can get there. And that's, life becomes, I don't know what the word, more delicious.
Yep.
You can do it. You can do it. And you find that it does happen. Say you go on holiday and you're feeling relaxed and you're not wound up with the tension of everyday life. Or when you're in love with someone, the tension, that those deliciousness, that same deliciousness comes through. What you have to do is create an interrupter into the exterior elements that cause you from having that deliciousness of life. When you have substances to do it, like cannabis, well, you don't give a shit really, because like your boss and things like that, you forget. And so that activates an amplification, almost like a kind of a constant version of Maslow's, you know, peak experience, but on a kind of a microdosing level, funny enough, the way to say it. But you can do that through things like moderation. And this is the thing, is I find, like, if I don't do something for a long time, when I go back to it, I have that amplification experience. Like, it's been 3 years now, since 2.5 years since I've been to the cinema. I know when I go back to the cinema, when I'm allowed in there again without needlecraft and when it's back to normal, that I will have the most amazing amplification experience in the cinema, strictly because of the uniqueness of it. And then I'll be like when I was a kid again, going for the first time.
Yeah, it's the same with any sensory experience, isn't it? Like, you know, food, you know, if you have if you crave a cheeseburger, you have one every day, it might be good, but it's not the same. Mood and consciousness altering things, you know, drugs, alcohol, even having sex, no matter how high your sex drive is, if you have it every day, it's somehow not the same as you say, abstinence and then returning to it after a period of time.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. It's so many things in life that moderation does make it more wonderful. And it's the same with the dreaming. I will have periods where my dreams are kind of crap, or I don't dream. But when I'm in the right frame of mind and I do have a dream, I will have dreams that are just spectacular and just remarkable. And I actually feel better for it the next day. And that's, again, it's the same thing. It's like, if you, I know you go into psychosis if you don't dream all the time, but if you don't dream at all. But I wonder if you go into psychosis, because you would go into psychosis too if you had amazing dreams every single night.
Then it's too much to process. Like you're not processing anything, and then you go to the opposite extreme.
Yeah, exactly. And whatever causes you to become psychotic happens on the other end of the scale.
As we move towards, I suppose, the latter part of the talk today, can I introduce an idea that I think is very important, and then I will shut up? And that's the idea of lucid dreaming. This is the concept that you're aware that you're dreaming. This happens to very few people. And for me personally, I do have dreams occasionally where it gets to a certain point and I think this is a dream. But what happens invariably is that I immediately wake up, usually because something bad is happening. And I think, oh, shit. But it's only a dream. Boom, I'm awake.
Yeah.
You know? Rory McSweeney, The Paradox of Lucid Dreaming. Sometimes I feel like I'm on a shopping channel, you know, but yeah. The Paradox of Lucid Dreaming. This is a great subject.
I've never had lucid dreaming, but I have to say I'm extremely envious of people that can. I wish I could.
I've had it loads of times. I've had it loads of times. So I'm sitting there saying, I've said to people, I've had arguments with people saying you're talking bollocks here because you know it's a dream. You know this is a fucking dream, I've said to people. You know you're talking through your ass here because you're dead. This is what happened. I actually went down to Wicklow yesterday, and our place in Wicklow is very dark and very quiet. And I go down there, I'm confessing something intimate about myself. I go down there for the better dreaming. And I had a dream that I was sitting at the fire in the house in Wicklow with my parents and my grandmother. And Granny came in and Dad said, "Oh, there's my mother at last." "No, Dad." I said, the four of us are in a dream and she's a ghost anyway. Granny, go to the light. And Granny said, "Oh, well, you discovered me this time." She got up and walked out of the room. So I said, "I think it's time we woke up now." And I woke up. That was yesterday.
Well,
so
I had a dream about my grandma last night too.
Sorry?
Christian, what part of Wicklow? Because I have weird experiences down there all the time.
Between Ballynockin and Lacken, up in the mountains, and that's a real freaky area up there.
Yeah, that's like the fairyland, yeah, big time.
Oh Jesus, yeah. And I'll tell you another interesting place where I've had nice dreams is Mulranny, and Mulranny is really, really off the wall. Mulranny is, but I have the strange, right? I have the lucid dreams where I'm talking to dead family members who I keep having to tell them to go to the light. Granny, you've been dead since '98. Please. I don't believe that was Granny's spirit as well. If that was probably just a lucid dream. Granny's spirit is somewhere else altogether. She's reincarnated somewhere. But possibly it was just, and we lead on to a bigger, broader topic. What has been going on since 2020, and particularly, dare I say it, since Wednesday of this week in Ireland, is affecting people, because it's inevitable that, and John Waters talks about the psychic shock of what's happened since 2020. It's inevitable it's going to affect people's dreams. Ireland, whether there are a number of us here, James and Kimberly, Tina, Greg, Jade, Venice, are not in Ireland at the moment, Jason and Timony. There was a murder on Wednesday, and, that has released something that we've never seen in this country before. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but what is going on in this country, there's something, in some regards, very black about what's going on. There's terrible, what I would call psychic turbulence that I never recall in my life before. This is a passing moment. This is gaslighting, but it'll be interesting to see how what's going on in Ireland at the moment is going to affect people's dreams and how it's going to affect us in the long term, because maybe we are a bit more red-pilled, maybe we are wearing the black glasses, but we'd be in denial to suggest that what's been happening since 2020 has not been affecting us. Of course it's been affecting us. It has to affect us. It's inevitable that it would affect us.
That's why one of the reasons I regret is I wish I had started to investigate the whole thing when the media back in 2020 were saying about, "Oh, don't worry about your dreams." Yeah. I feel now, looking back on that, was a lost opportunity for research, because I, like everyone else, I was discombobulated by the whole thing of what was going on in the world. But I really do wish that I had in fact, it's probably not too late. I could probably go back and, but I do want to know who the hell was behind that, why, and what that agenda was.
I wouldn't regret it. We have to process it. We deal with it when it comes. And, to suggest that you missed an opportunity there, you might be being a bit harsh on yourself. We're talking about it now,
Also, it also tied in with the thing like, stay at home and watch Netflix. And what Jason and Timmy were saying about, like, they threw out of TV because that thing was addictive and was like sucking you in. That, it's almost like this transformation for psychosis thing we're hearing about a lot lately. It was probably a double whammy of all those things, I
actually have a question about this is a bit personal, and I only ask it out of personal curiosity. There is a place that I have dreamed about very, very often. And I have looked this up on the internet, and that is how I came upon a podcast with actually a title. It was titled the exact same way how I had titled that place in my mind. And it is the city of orange lights. And I have no other way of describing it. It is a city, it is always a city, and it only has orange lights. There are people there, but they are like shades of people. They're solid, but they are not full color. They are only reflecting the orange light. So I looked that up on the internet. I came upon a podcast that was called The City of Orange Lights in Dreams. That described exactly the place that I see in these dreams. Another thing that is something that you talked about once, Thomas, the city of Turin. And this is the thing about the City of Orange Lights. It is always the same, but it is always different. And you described the city of Turin, and I recognize it immediately. I have been there, and it was the City of Orange Lights in one of its many, many forms. Then later, during that podcast that I was listening to about that city, there were some things that were said in it. And then later I was reading the Divina Commedia of Dante. And he was describing the city of Lis, which is a place in one of the circles of hell, and I'm not really sure which one. And it was very, very similar. Like these people, they were just shades. They're not really aware that they're being there, but they're tortured somehow. They're not sentient like we are. And I felt like I was not unwelcome, but I definitely was the weird one out there. I should keep a low profile. I should not make a spectacle of myself. Just keep calm. And I just wanted to know if anyone else ever had a dream like that, specifically a city with orange lights.
No, that's amazing. But you said that when you looked it up, it was a common dream.
Yes, because I was just looking it up on the internet, and I typed it into Google, City of Orange Dreams. And one of the first hits was a podcast. I think it was the Paranormal Roundtable podcast, one of their older ones. But they never...
To me, it sounds more like, okay, so we have reality, we have our dream reality. There is another reality that we can access through the hypnagogic state. It's called the imaginal realm, okay? And what you said about the way that you describe the city of orange lights, in the respect that it is always different, but it's always the same. In the respect, like when you go to Dublin, it's always the same, but it's always different, right? The imaginal realm has more persistence than our dream states. And within the imaginal realm, there are these areas, right? So very well could be an area that is like this city of orange lights that maybe you visited. So if you think about the Red Book and you think about Jung, I mean, he went into the imaginal realm and he went back to these places, these scapes that stayed, that existed, but also changed, right? So maybe not so much a dream space, but an imaginal space, as an example.
Sure, maybe it's just a part of our human psyche, collective psyche. It's possible. I rule nothing out. No, it's definitely something I want to look more into. So thank you for that tip. I'm going to read up on my Jung literature now.
on the subject of Tina's common dream, the orange city lights, I sent a picture to you, Jason. I don't know if you can put it up on the screen. This is something I found out a few years ago. And for the last 10 years, people all over the world have been dreaming about this guy.
Yes, I know.
Has anybody seen him?
No.
You just know about it.
Now, he doesn't look human, does he?
No.
Like his mouth is really wide. It almost looks like someone who's a facsimile of a human trying to look like a human. To me, I think of one of the Men in Black thing.
Yeah.
Oh, creepy.
Yeah, this is a tulpa. This is a thought form. This is like what, there's more bodies on the earth than there are souls. There's no soul.
No.
Yeah, but anybody in the comments section who's actually seen this fella, or in the comments on YouTube, let us know, because I've been intrigued by this ever since I heard about it about 10 years ago. And apparently it's been going on longer than that, but I have seen discussions about it where people have literally screamed when they said, I see that guy all the time. And I don't know if he talks or anything, but he has he doesn't have a particularly threatening look, but he's peculiar looking. Like, he he almost looks inbred. But the mouth is very, very strange. But they always describe it the same way. He's balding on top. He's those black eyes, very thick, bushy eyebrows. And he's it's not just like any particular culture. The Japanese see him, and they don't see him with Japanese features, and he's seen in Africa, and he's not seen with African features. It's that guy in every culture. Interesting, isn't it?
No, it's not threatening at all. It just, to me, just looks like a lost, well, I'm going to soul. I said there was no soul, like a lost soul. It just looks weak, lost, lonely, but also, as you said, Thomas, not human.
Yeah. Yeah.
Imagine that mouth smiling with a mouth full of teeth. It would remind you of the grinning man, Indrid Cold.
I've seen the film called The Smiling Man, I think it is, and it looks a bit like him, that character. Has anyone seen that short movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, or I don't know if Thomas can dig that up there or whatever, but looks just the same as that. And it'd be interesting to know if anyone who's had the dream with this character in it, if the dream has gone further than just that face, or whether that, anything horrible has happened.
I'm not able to look into the eyes there. I'm actually switching off my monitor. Let me know when it's...
I can't look at it either.
I know, it's creeping me out.
Yeah. Take it off, Jason. Take it off.
I'm going to be having nightmares now.
And he'll appear in them.
Thanks. I can't unsee that now.
Maybe he reminds you of a date where you had when you were young or something. I don't know.
Thanks, Thomas.
What he reminds me of, has anybody seen the movie Vanilla Sky?
Yeah.
He reminds me of the tech support guy at the end who tells Tom Cruise's character that it's all a simulation, that he's been frozen in time. Doesn't he look like that guy a little bit, like the same kind of mouth and weird facial features? But that
Yes.
somehow that guy is like a product of the simulation that I want to say his name is David, the character in Vanilla Sky that David's living in.
Greg, can you expand upon what you mean by him in particular being a Tolkien?
Sorry, was that directed at me, Thomas? You broke up a little bit.
Yes, Greg, yeah.
Well, sorry, again, you broke up. But Tulpa, it's a concept of it's an ancient concept, actually. I'm no expert in this area, but and I use the word thought form. It's a kind of an entity that is brought into being through the conscious or unconscious will of a conscious individual. Like you or I could do this. So if people just Google Tulpa, or your favorite search engine, Tulpa, you'll find a Wikipedia entry, no doubt.
But the question I asked you was, in relation to this dude, what's telepathic about him?
It was just that, non-human, not really conscious, just something of the other, but less. Just no emotion, no feelings, no desire. Just some kind of bare, raw existence dependent on something external. No inner life, no inner fire, no independent existence. Just
so a typical NPC, basically.
Yeah, like an incidental golem.
Yeah.
And that they wonder now with the arrival of the NPC concept, which is basically something that changed my life because it answered so many questions as to why the actor who played Nick Cotton on EastEnders would get attacked on the underground in London by fellas saying, "How dare you beat up Little Mo," in the actual soap opera, because they couldn't distinguish between the actor and that's very common. Actors who play like wife beaters and bad guys and often get attacked on the street. And I could never understand how anyone could be so detached from reality. And of course, when the NPC thing was really started to be explained, that was like, well, there you go. They can't tell the difference. That's what they're like. And it's funny that thing, we now live in the world where we're painfully aware of what a huge amount of humanity actually is. One of those things. Was this almost like, as Christian says, a dress rehearsal for what was coming?
We have witnessed, sorry, my mic off there. We'd witnessed the NPC thing, particularly in Ireland, since Wednesday. with, you know, all of this completely superficial virtue signaling, which people are wallowing in. And it's not getting easier. Okay, we talked about Stalingrad, or Thomas analyzed the Stalingrad moment, and that's right. And I won't elucidate too much about why that was so, because we're on live on Facebook and YouTube. But, you know, it's not between Stalingrad and the fall of Berlin, it didn't get any nicer. And it's been extremely turbulent since Wednesday. And again, I had a video of pot bangers, and then another video up today, bot pangers, because I just, you know, hey, but we are really seeing that superficial repetition of ritual with no potential of these people even giving it any deep thought. And
the psychic weather report I'm going to deliver tomorrow night in a week, stranger, we won for the ages, believe me.
I'll be hanging on every word. I'll
be one for the ages.
I'll kid you not. I'll be hanging on every word.
All the psychotics have flared up this weekend. It is really quite remarkable.
It's full moon tomorrow.
Denise, I have a question for you.
It's exceptional, even by our standards.
Denise, are you still there?
Yes, sweetie. Yes, I am, darling.
I have a question for you. I actually wanted to ask you this and I kept forgetting. So I'm going to ask you now before I forget again. With all your work doing magical Egypt and all of that, I am really curious about how those archetypes seep into your dreams. If you've had any of those God forms or any of those archetypes showing up in your sleep realm.
No, isn't that terrible?
No.
Totally boring.
No.
Totally boring dreams about Rod Stewart and stuff like that. And my mum, and, you know what I mean? Like,
but Tiffany,
like
Tiffany.
Maybe chance, because like I think Thomas has pointed out, when he's doing these animations and he's working on like a temple or something for like 30 hours or 50 hours or 100 hours and just sitting there looking at these things, I'll ask him, Timony, and I'll find out, because he's the one that's literally immersed inside of them. You know, I
was just going to say, Timony, if you watch the production of those shows, they're dreamlike. They're dreamlike.
They are, yeah. That's
yeah. So it's almost really like that's already resolved into reality. That was one of the things that really attracted me to that more than anything else, was the production style.
Absolutely.
And Chance does that deliberately. Like he really is deliberately, you'll notice, like History Channel is like boom, 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 really fast, kind of, and quotes one sentence here, one sentence there. Chance has slowed the whole thing down, and he's really, really trying to talk to the right hemisphere of the brain, right? And making it very slow and making it very dreamlike. And he spends a lot of times on the animations to kind of get people into a more creative state. So it's very deliberate. And because he's the one that does that, I will ask him if he has that imagery seeping in. I know he has a lot of terrible dreams. Like I wake him up every second night because of really bad dreams, but whether it's related to the symbolism or not, I'll find out and I'll let you know, darling.
That'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Does anybody have sleep paralysis?
Yes,
I have.
me.
I've never had it.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
It is. It's horrifying. Yeah.
Not often, but I've had it.
Oh.
Thomas, you you briefly mentioned by the way, this magical Egypt thing is a thing in my mind and name, but I don't recall consuming any content. But I love the idea of slowing everything down so things can, seep in differently. It's so counter to all the media and advertising, how that works, which is like, bang, 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 constant, noise, color, everything, and no time to take anything in. But you were talking about psychic weather, Thomas, and your report that you'll be delivering shortly. And about, things being off the charts. Do you think that's interesting? Or I don't know if maybe we'll find out tomorrow, that's interesting in the context of what we've said the last couple of weeks about us feeling that things are more positive in a way?
Yeah, I think, yeah. You've all heard my theory of the Renfielding, that like, whenever things have been gone really well in my life and things have really look like they're reaching the next level, lunatics appear. It's almost like a lunatics and come after me. monsters come after me, human monsters. And it always happens right on the cusp of me jumping to the next level.
That's right.
Something about to come, something about to happen. And these people are set off by some force in the other worlds that doesn't want me to succeed for whatever reason. It could be the collective jealousy of other people. I don't know. It could be entities that don't want me sharing this information. I don't know. But it has happened to the point where I could set my clock to it. When I look back over the years, the timing has been impeccable. Going right back to my 20s. Now, I think it's happening on the collective. That whatever pathological force is in the other world driving what we went through for the last 23 months has lost control, and a rat backed into the corner type situation has developed. And those of us, all of us here experience this, seems to be, the Renfielding has begun of the insane, of the unhinged, of the broken, at a collective level. And that's exactly what, Christian, that's going on in Ireland at the moment.
Thomas, really quickly, can you, because I've had a couple people ask me to explain Renfielding, and I've explained it to them, but you explain it so much better. So can you just give a brief rundown on what that is so I can refer them to this?
In Bram Stoker's novel, Dracula has a character who's a madman who lives in a psychiatric hospital in England. He needs him to help him get to England, to get into there. Now, it's based on the concept of the people inside asylums go crazy when the full moon happens, and this kind of thing. But he's able to, because Renfield is both highly intelligent and also incredibly insane, he can communicate telepathically with Renfield. And the closer that Dracula comes to England and comes to Whitby, the more the people inside the insane asylum become more and more insane and screaming, and become completely unwell. And it's all been a channel through Renfield. Renfield is almost like the activator for everyone else in the asylum. So Renfielding means a person who's not right in the head, mentally ill, insane, unhinged, being activated by pathological forces in the other world to attack what they want to attack in this world. And I think what's going on now, and and I'll go more in depth towards about a bit more fleshed out, a bit more in terms of present things. But if you look at the people, for instance, in Ireland, what's going on now, what Christian was talking about, and I don't want to talk about it too much because this could be censored. We basically have our version of the pot bangers they had in England. It's finally happened here, right? And it's happened because the individuals who have fed this, and it will happen in Australia where there was a big place like Victoria and stuff, and New Zealand where there's been severe lockdowns. As this thing begins to end, it will manifest with the pathological forces who do not want to lose their feeding of human psychic energy, operating through the insane and the unhinged and the pathological in order to drum up more fear and phobia, because that's what these entities on the other side feed upon. And they will do things. Ireland's already had its colossal post Needlecraft Renfield moment as the power slips away. This is why our Deputy Prime Minister, a particular sinister individual by any standards, was the first to jump on this murder of a woman to try and make it. He wanted to get and then we have a situation where people who are terrified of masks are unmasked people are now terrified of men. And that happened in England too. Do you remember there's a woman murdered in a park, and this MP tried to have a curfew on men? These are pathological forces in the background. Renfielding the NPCs just to show up and bang the pots, right? Like performing seals, right? They're part of the process, but the pathological Renfields upon the earth the psychopaths, the virtue signalers, the ones who are the users of people, they are being activated in order to be pathological. Oh, men should be all locked up. Oh, we better, this is why there's always dupers the lights and they all have the same look. They were dealing with the same archetype. And this is what the Renfielding means. An entity on the other, whatever entities on the other side are tormenting humanity, run out of energy as we start to get better. In this case, things are picking up around, like Greg said, right? And Dr. Malone, particularly in America, and Joe Rogan, they still, they're terrified of their food supply being taken off. So they claw at anything that's taken it away. And what's taken it away? Well, we are. People like us were the ones for the last who stood our ground and had what we held for the last 23 months are the ones who've done that. So therefore, the Renfields are coming after it. And all of us, I bet you all of us who've stood up for this personally are going to get either whacked. It's already started or it's coming next few days. And so this is out. I know the people like on YouTube are watching this, be prepared. If you're part of what I would call the ones who held what we had, you're going to get it. You're going to get it, Christian, from that crazy neighbor you have. It's coming. They will all get it at some point. These creatures are feeding and they're Renfielding through the lunatics. And that's what it is.
I just want to say there's only Thomas and myself are in Ireland at the moment. I don't think anybody else in this chat is in Ireland at the moment. We cannot describe what it's like here at the moment. We actually cannot describe. I'm not exaggerating that. I'm 48. I'll be 49 in September this year. I don't remember with the hunger strikers in 1981. And that was a major Renfielding thing, the hunger strikers in 81. I don't remember it wasn't close. It wasn't close to what we're at now.
We stopped at Grange in County Sligo on the border with Donegal yesterday. And what I saw, I could not believe what I was seeing. People leaving the village to go to the village square to do, I don't know, vigil for this event that's happened. And I saw people walking like this. No, I'm not. You know yourself, Christian.
Yeah, I do.
Like that, zombies. It was zombies. And like I said, the last 23 months have been the greatest education ever. But my God, are we getting a crash course PhD in it right at the end?
It's very turbulent. And again, I won't bang on too much about it, but all of you who are in this chat who aren't in Ireland, we can't describe it. We can't describe it.
And one interesting dimension of all this is that for those who don't know, you have the island of Ireland that for about a century has been subdivided. So you have the Irish Republic, where Christian and Thomas are, and you have the north of Ireland, which is loosely corresponds to the ancient county of Ulster, which is part of the United Kingdom. Okay, so not saying that what's going on in Northern Ireland currently is somehow great and wonderful. It does differ from mainland Britain, which consists of England, Scotland, and Wales. But what explains that you can be where Christian and Thomas are in that part of the island of Ireland, and you move across a border that only exists on maps and in minds, and behavior changes? That explains, or at least it suggests that what people are being fed and what they're digesting in one area is changing behavior. It's not something inherent.
Oh yeah, like during the Troubles, like in Sligo, there was no problem at all. A couple of miles down the road in Enniskillen, it was horrible. There was absolute, carnage over, people of different communities killing each other.
Right, that was a terrific insight because, what's going on at the moment, it's not happening in Northern Ireland. It really, okay, there are some people going on with it in Northern Ireland. There are Irish communities going on with it in England. But that intensity, that blast, that thing that we're encountering here, it does stop at the border. That's right. And for the past 22 months or 20 months of this, haven't we seen, for the first time in my life, a real distinction between Northern Ireland and the Republic? I've never been aware of such a distinction before. I think we can sum it up in 3 letters, RTE.
Well, we're living... It's almost like back to the dream thing again. Each country gets a weaponized nightmare of its own.
Yeah.
Like, Dan Andrews, he's the weaponized nightmare in Victoria. just into Arden, New Zealand, and go around the world. It's all the same. In Washington State, where Jason and the thing is, they had someone talking about locking people up. These are almost like weaponized nightmares. This is why we pay attention to dreams, because dreams tell us of the Renfields. Because that's another thing. Right before the Renfield ever started, I had a dream telling me about them. So it's almost like those of us who have the eyes to see experience the activation on the cusp of the activation happening. And that's what makes us the most dangerous of all to the pathologicals on the other side. And that's why these types, all the empires, they've killed the shamans, they killed the Native American holy men, they killed the witch doctors in Africa, the Druids, the Aborigine spiritual elders, because those were the ones in all those native cultures. This is why the first thing when Christianity moved into Germany, they killed all the satyrs and they killed all the Druids. And they chopped down the trees, the sacred thing, because there's a thing that some people are able to dream in the future at some level. And it may come in symbolisms and it may come in metaphor, but it's unmistakable in hindsight. And that's the sad thing about it. We've all had a bad experience in our lives. And we've had the pre-dream about it. And it wasn't until after we went, fuck, that was it. That was what the dream meant. The trick, the skill, the thing is to figure out that the enemy is moving and mobilizing in the other world. And you're getting espionage and information through the dreams. And that's why I value dreaming so highly.
I don't want to go too far, but there have been very many things that I could have said in this tonight. But I actually approached it tonight apprehensively because I dream, and I dream a lot. And, you know, at the end of 2012, I saw something was coming. So what happened in 2020 didn't surprise me. That may sound glib, it may sound smug. I apologize if it does. It's not. I knew this was coming. And I know what's coming in the future because I've dreamt about it, and I'm afraid I'm not willing to say.
Yeah, on August 8, 2001, I dreamt about the 9/11 attack. It's in my dream diary. I was standing on a building that was just girders that was destroyed among a city of skyscrapers. And I even wrote in parentheses, brackets, New York ? And that was 1 month and almost 1 month before 9/11. We dream about these things, and lots of people, there's some very good websites and things telling their experience about dreaming about these big events, which is one of the reasons I believe that one was a cataclysmic change in the shift of the matrix. And I also think the heavy dreaming at the beginning of the lockdown might be the beginning of the recorrection to get the timelines back together again.
One thing I would say, if I was signing off on this, is to everyone watching this, if you've been with us this far, go to sleep tonight, pay attention to your dreams. Tomorrow, think about it in the light of what we said. Think about what you experienced, and then consider developing that going forward. Because I think that dreaming it is important for us collectively as a species, as individuals, certainly, but I think potentially collectively as a species.
I want to say something about that, Greg. Something also on a positive note, because I was raised by a pathological Renfield, as Thomas would describe it, and I had nightmares, recurring nightmares for years about something chasing me, something evil, and it made a lot of noise behind me all the time, and I was always too afraid to look back, and I kept running and running and running until one night I looked back to what it was, and it was a dragon this size with the face of that person on it. It was pathetic, it was small, it was insignificant, and I never ever had that dream again, ever. That's what they are. They're small, they're pathetic, and they're insignificant.
That's right.
They just make a lot of noise.
That's a beautiful finish, I think. And we all agree that we're going to swim in the dream world tonight.
Definitely.
I do want to say this. please let me say this. Please don't let me alarm people or let people get too despondent. I don't want to be gaslighting people. I don't want to do what the mainstream media do. You know, it'll be okay. We're going to stay positive and we're going to win and we'll be laughing at the end of this. I really do. I've always said that. I'll say it once more time, and that's me.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's over and out.
They've already lost. It's only the method of their exit.
They've already lost.
Meet up at a real
They've
pub.
already lost.
Yep. Good night, everybody. Thanks
Good night.
again.
Night.
Absolutely. Fantastic.
Super
You were
fun.
all amazing tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Night, night, everybody. Bye bye.
Sweet dreams.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Real dreams, Thomas.